Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Walk on Wednesday. Before we bring on our very special Walk on Wednesday, Kaustubha, how are you?
I'm doing good, Raghu.
Everything good in your life?
I can't complain.
Okay.
Happy to be here with you this morning.
Me too.
Looking forward to the Italy thing. People are starting to respond.
Italy thing is happening. It's for real. Yeah. It's Monday, August 30th, 2021 to September 6th, 2021. You can go to our wisdomofthesages.com where we're going to do this. I'm going to read a little bit. Join us this summer for a week long of Wisdom of the Sages retreat in Italy for an authentic ashram-style experience in the historic Villa Vrindavan, located in Tuscany, the heart of Italy, just south of Florence. When I say just south, I mean very close to Florence.
How close?
Just like public transportation away.
Why is Tuscany the heart?
Are you kidding me?
I'm asking.
Are you kidding me, man?
I'm not.
I don't even want to go there right now. Tuscany's the heart of Italy.
All right.
But we love Italy in general, and we have great excursions. And we're going to be hearing and chanting all day, doing yoga asanas. They have peacocks. We're going to be riding peacocks around the villa. Massive 8-foot peacocks. You can just ride them around if you come to Italy with us. We're looking forward to that. This is what we do in Italy. Anyway, check that out. Join the party. And any other announcements, Mara, before we dive into the deep depths of
we have
Bhakta Justin.
We have a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 1:00 today. And this evening is Nitinanda Chandra's Bhagavad Gita Shloka class.
Oh,
Great.
yeah.
Great thing. These are for Patreon members, patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. If you're new to the show, come support us. It's a community supported podcast. So whatever you're giving right now, I want you to up it $4. What do you say? $4 right now. I'm looking around the Zoomers.
He's getting out of control.
By the end of the day.
He's losing it.
It's called the hard sale.
Okay. It's the coffee.
So we want to bring, it's the yerba mate. Show them. It's beyond coffee. It's this stuff.
Okay.
So we have a special Walk on Wednesday. If you're new to Walk on Wednesday, every Wednesday we bring on somebody who's got a cool, interesting story. And no one is cooler than my good friend and student, Bhakta Justin. Come on the microphone, Bhakta Justin.
Hi.
We're sharing a mic today. Bhakta Justin has a great story and how he came to Bhakti. And I think it's perfect for like this crazy world that we live in. It's a crazy background of psychedelics and drag lifestyle. And he's such a sweet guy. I met him in a teacher training last year. I did the teacher training and everyone loved him. Lady Di was there. She's nodding her head. And then he contacted me when I was in Nepal. He said, you know what? I'm taking my spiritual life very seriously. And I've been practicing brahmachari. It's like a celibate student for many months and chanting a lot of japa. You're the closest thing I have to a guru in my life. Can I come serve at the farm? And he's come, and we've been together ever since. Bhakta Justin, welcome to the show.
What's up, guys? Horrible.
We're sharing the microphone now. Bhakta Justin, you want to tell a little of your past and how you got here and the crazy journey home?
Hi guys. I'm from New York City. I started using psychedelics at a very early age. I started probably around 13 years old, 14 years old. I'm 40 now, and I was kind of given this like early introduction into party culture, rave culture, nightclub culture. I was raised partly in Florida and partly in New York. And in Florida, there's absolutely nothing to do but get into trouble. So that's what I did. And my mom didn't have much of a hold on me. I would just run away at like midnight most nights and do whatever I wanted.
Every parent is freaking out right now. Okay.
And if she said no, I would just like whine my way out of it. But yeah.
Were there benefits? We're talking about, and a lot of people will say this. Sometimes there were some benefits of psychedelics. I'm not here to promote psychedelics, but people talk like that. What was your psychedelic realizations?
Well, I think it definitely started out recreational, and then eventually, my relationship deepened, and it became more medicinal. And then eventually I started to meet shamans, and it became like actual work. And I got really into Terrence McKenna, and I heard about his heroic dose, which is it's like taking like a huge amount at once and going as deep as you can, and like sitting in a room all alone with lights off in silence. And I would do that. I did that like once a week for a long time.
Are you pitching it to us?
No, I'm not pitching it. But basically, it put me in a place where I was super open. And it was wonderful in the moment. But afterwards, I would always kind of be back in the same place. And over time, my mind would open, and it would make me open to more ideas. But I never felt like I was actually doing the work and progressing.
I think that's big. Kaustubha, you have an opinion on that as well? Did you ever take psychedelics, Kaustubha?
I've taken psychedelics, Raghunath, but it was pretty much purely recreational. But, you know, I did have that experience. It does make you think, and it does give you some, you know, perspective, you know, like, you know, I'm very small, I'm very big, you know, it just plays, it kind of like, at least that was my experience. It would kind of play with different perspectives.
Me too. Matter of fact, it gave me like sort of spiritual insight, I felt. But, you know, a devotee said to me, said, because I said, well, what about drugs? Because some people, you know, hallucinogens, some people say they're, you know, they can give you some type of deep realizations. And I took them, and I had a deep realizations about even reading the Gita, or that everything is temporary, or everything the Gita says makes sense. And he said something very beautiful I'll never forget. He said, don't mistake the flute for the player. Does that make sense?
No, it's good.
Don't mistake the flute for the player of the flute?
Is behind that. Krishna is behind that. Don't give it to the drug. Because sometimes you can take those same drugs and have it had no effect. So let's come back to your how did that end? Did the hallucinogenics turn you towards God? How did that work?
Okay, so basically last year, my life had kind of come to this like huge climax of I'd started working in nightlife as a drag queen, and I was working in food service for a very, very long time, but I wasn't making as much money as I could. So I started working in bars and bar backing, which is behind the scenes at a bar. Like basically at gay bars, all the bartenders are like huge muscle men gods. And I was like their servant, you know? So I would
servant of the gods. That's practically Krishna consciousness.
It's like being a squire to a circle of knights. Like some knights are really cool and some knights are assholes. And And I would like lug like heavy boxes up and down stairs of wine and beer and liquor bottles and all the ice, and it's basically push all night, and you sweat through your clothes, but you make really good money. You just get no credit, you know. But to kind of medicate that lifestyle, I would drink because the drinking was free anyway, and it got to the point where I was just drinking 4 times a week. And then the pandemic happened and everything kind of stopped, and I said, like, what am I doing with my life? I stopped drinking and I started meditating twice a day and doing these heavy doses of mushrooms because I had nothing else to do. But then at the same time, I got into Wisdom of the Sages through Joe. I had met you at flight school like 8 years prior. But then
where was that?
At Kula Yoga.
Oh wow.
And then I had, for some reason, you came into my mind, and I looked you up again, and then Joe Rogan came up. I watched Joe Rogan. That was amazing. Then I heard about Wisdom of the Sages through that. I started watching Wisdom of the Sages, and there was just something about that. It was like the second episode that like hooked me, you know?
Second episode of Wisdom of the Sages?
Yeah, with the universe is being created from Krishna's pores. It just sounded like quantum physics. Yeah. For me, like, that sounded like God. And then I ended up taking the yoga teacher training, and slowly but surely, all of the things that I thought I needed, like the alcohol and the psychedelics, they just started to like fall off. And eventually I wasn't feeling anything on the psychedelics. Like I stopped feeling, it was really strange. Like I was hitting this point where they weren't hitting me as hard. And I thought,
you got to take more. You got to take more dose, deeper, right, Kaustubha? That's what happens.
And I was
Don't be a quitter.
I was like, I guess I don't need it anymore. Yeah, basically.
That's a beautiful story, actually. No, what happens? You get into Krishna Bhakti, and all these things that we are using to medicate ourselves, we realize they don't even medicate us anymore. It's not the same anymore. They're not as fun anymore. There's not enough depth anymore. And the problem with it is, and this is why, and I'm not saying you can't get deep realizations from these psychedelics, but this is why I don't go there. When the big ayahuasca gold rush was coming on like a couple years ago or 5 years ago, and take ayahuasca, you need it. Because I want to keep it. I don't want to dive in and then dive out and dive in and dive out and dive in. And I believe that if there is a God in the sky, I don't have to go externally to change my life. I can go internally to change my life. I don't need something outside of me. What do you think about that, Kaustubha?
I agree with you. And I'm curious, what is Bhakta Justin's lifestyle like now that he's practicing?
Yeah. What is my lifestyle like
What is your lifestyle like now?
It's super simple. I just chant my 16 rounds. I try to wake up as early as I can. And
like what time?
I take cold showers every day. It depends. Like, because of the traveling to California, it kind of threw me off because I was getting up at 4:30 before that, but now it's like 6.
Well, you know, it's like me too. It's like we've been traveling a lot. So he shadows me wherever I go. He helps me out with everything I do. He's like a
He's serving a devotee.
He's serving the devotees. It's like, yeah, it's what it's been going on for thousands of years. You know, you take somebody under your wing, or you go under somebody's wing, and you just do your devotee thing.
Nice.
Yeah, but I kind of hit the point where like sobriety was a psychedelic. Because of how deep I'd gone into the psychedelics world, sobriety was, I was like, oh, I guess sobriety is now the psychedelic, you know, because it's just so, now sobriety is like the challenge.
Psychedelics became the norm.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And we're forced to just deal with everything and sort of decipher everything. What does God mean by this pleasure? What does he mean by this pain? What does he mean by this loss? What does he mean by this heartbreak or detachment or attachment being broken? Anyway, I got a feeling I would have got into that rave scene. It seemed fun.
Super fun.
It's super. You just said super fun.
It was preparing me for kirtan. Absolutely.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Between drag and rave, it's like a completely mundane kirtan party. We do the same thing. We do the same thing, but God, there's no drugs. It's just God. It's dancing and singing and embracing each other and staying up and eating wonderful things. It's like a real dance in the streets. It's like a music video. It's like we live a music video.
Definitely.
Occasionally stop and study things. What do you think, Kaustubha?
I'm just noting that down. We live a music video. I think that's a hashtag right there.
He's taking notes on my rants. Anyway, Justin, thank you. You got some wisdom for us? Want a little bit? You want to drop some wisdom for us? Yeah, drop a little nugget for us. Something we can take away with us.
A favorite Gita verse, maybe?
My favorite Gita verse?
He's been learning Gita verses.
I've been learning Gita verses, but I haven't learned my favorite one yet.
Okay.
But actually, of the ones that I've learned, my favorite one is Tasham Ivanu Kampartam Bhajatam Preti Purvagam Dadami Buddhi Yogamtam Yanamam Upiyantite. Was that it? No, I messed it up.
He combined two that were close.
I don't. It's Tesham Ivanu Kampartam Aham Magyana Jam Tamaha Nasiyam Yatma Bhavasto Gyana Deepana Basfata. To show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance.
Booyah.
Yeah.
Good job,
That's
Bhakti
my
Justin.
favorite.
Harry Bo. Let's give them all a big Harry Bo.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. No, he's a great pleasure. Love having him with me. And yeah. Ugh. All right, let's dive into the nectar.
All right. Kick it off. You ready? We can't hear you, Raghu. Gentle with that cable. Still can't hear you. A lot of dead air here, Raghu. We're counting on you. Come on back for us. Can you hear me? All right. We don't hear anything from you. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. You got it, Raghu?
Of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, in loving service to the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timurandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet. All right. Bhakta Justin, I tell you, it's so good to see people just start to blossom in their spiritual life. And you know what's the interesting thing? We don't all become the same person. We're all unique individuals. That stays. You don't lose your individuality. If we're all putting on tuxedos, that doesn't mean we've lost our personality because we have the same outfit on. In the same way, as you get into bhakti, the only thing you're losing are your bad habits. And your bad habits, what's going to shine through is what's really you underneath those bad habits. And that's sometimes confronting, all right, because we've covered them over for so long. We've created a false persona, a false personality. Where are we at today, Mr. Kaustubha?
We are in the third canto. We are in chapter 12, where we are on text number 33. I think you're really loud right now, Raghu. I think you're
Now I'm really loud.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all right. Just a little distance from the mic now, I think.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So we were talking about Brahma. We had this unusual, unfortunate
mishap,
I suppose you could call it. It was embarrassing. Lord Brahma, this most revered figure, it came out in the past that there's some kind of transgression here. He became attracted to his own daughter, his own sons. It was an embarrassment. His sons came to him and they kind of respectfully brought up the topic. But we're trying to put that into perspective yesterday, and we said, we mentioned that that it said that the Vedic literature speaks on different. It speaks to us in different ways, right?
Oh yeah, why don't you recap that, because that was interesting.
Sometimes it teaches like a king, which means like bold proclamations, right?
Yeah.
Do this and don't do that, but like you don't talk to a friend like that, So like, it's like if you're the king and you're ruling, then you have that position. But friends, it's not like one has that position over the other. There's more equality. So if you want to share a message, you may not do it through a bold proclamation, but you might do it through a story that has a moral, so that the person kind of comes to that conclusion on their own, right? And then there's the subtlest of all, which is to communicate like a lover, which means like there's innuendos used, and sometimes you're saying almost the opposite, to get the meaning across. But Jiva Goswami mentioned that and I think he was quoting from the Puranas, where he said that the Srimad Bhagavatam teaches on all three levels.
Right.
And so sometimes when you're hearing a story, it's not every detail that you're meant to like focus on, but it's the moral that you're meant to focus on.
Sure.
Right. All the details are building up to the moral, and it's the moral that you're meant to walk away with. So although we hear this about Brahma and it sounds a little weird, let's not get caught up in that. Let's try to understand the message that's being meant to convey. And the way that I understand the message is that we see that here's this. That we might feel that I've got my act together, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, specifically speaking about like sexual control, right? Having control of your senses, particularly sexually.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe I don't need to be so cautious, or maybe I don't need to be so aware. I've kind of got that, dealt with. But we're seeing here even Brahma. Right, even that most respectable, learned, voice of reason loses it, and embarrasses himself.
We are one bad choice away from ruining our entire life.
Yeah. So now this next verse talks about his response, and it's very interesting because here he is, and as we said, he's gone through his job dissatisfaction and his anger and disappointment in his children and fear. And now humiliation, but he's still, a man with a job to do. He still has a service to carry out. And so, how does he deal with it? And we hear about that in this next verse, which is text 3:12:33.
33. The father of all the Prajapatis, those are the progenitors of all beings, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, they were all sort of correcting him, became very much ashamed, and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later, that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness.
So what, did he kill himself?
Sounds like it.
It does.
Sounds like he killed his body.
Yeah, but the Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has spoken on this verse.
That's one of the great masters, writes a commentary on this many hundreds of years ago.
So due to his shame, Brahma gives up his body, but he said here that giving up his body means he gave up a disposition. Okay. He didn't
give up his actual body?
He didn't give up his actual body.
He gave up his disposition.
Well,
what does that mean?
Well, disposition, in other words, we have a physical body, but there's also the subtle body, which includes the mind, right? There's different sheaths, right? Like we could talk about the koshas, right?
Yeah, you learn this in a yoga teacher 200-hour training, right?
It's there in the Upanishads. You can learn it in the Upanishads.
The koshas. Mara, do you know the number? You know the koshas?
Oh, Raghu.
You did take that teacher training with me, didn't you?
Anamana kosh.
Anamoy kosh. That's a good one. So that's the Anna body. So the soul is covered by this food body, or Anna means like grains, right?
Yeah,
I think it means food or grains.
Yeah.
So we have this, and we say that too. You are what you eat. And then we have this manamo Pranamoya kosh.
Pranamoya, yeah.
Pranamoya is the air bodies. It's hard to think of it like that, but that's how they look at things with yogic lenses, that we have subtle airs that are like floating around this machine, different airs,
Your
the gross
breathing,
machine.
your digestion, your circulation.
Even the blinking, this right,
Yeah.
the sniffing, prana, the evacuating, giving birth. It's like an air, downward flowing air. Then there's the manamoya kosh, the mind, the mental body. This is a big one.
Or something,
right?
yeah, something that's called the Gyanamoya or Manamoya, yeah.
Manamoya. Then there's the Vijnanamoya,
Mhm.
right? The Vijnanamoya, like the
Intellect,
intellect,
discrimination,
discernment.
Yeah.
And then there's what's called, now this is confusing because you hear it from different authorities say different things, the Anandamoya kosh.
Mhm.
Now, how would you describe that? This is actually good that I've got you here, Kaustubha, because the Anandamoya kosh is the bliss body, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean it's a layer over the soul? Or does
is
that
it
mean
their
it's actually
core?
the soul?
Yeah. You know, I think you're right. People do speak of it different ways. When we say koshas, it means sheaths, and sheaths means something that covers something else.
Right.
So whether this Ananda mark, it's a good question. Honestly, you know, this is something in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is not talked about so much, and it's not really one of our, you know, certainly it's not one of my topics, but we could look into that, you know.
That's a good.
Yeah. What? Good way to get out of it?
That's a good way to. No, that's a good. That's a
Good way
good
to
thing
avoid the
to
question.
put Mara on. That's what I was going to say. Put Mara on the Ananda one. Well, because what'll happen is there's different acharyas of those lineages that study, you know,
Speak of it in different ways. Explain.
Upanishad or something, and they give their different vantage points of what that Anandamaya kosh. But basically, if it's not, it's either incredibly thin, so just the soul is emanating through that screen of a kosh, or it just means it's the original soul.
So now we're hearing that Brahma gave up his body, but he didn't give up the Anamoya kosha, right? He didn't kill himself.
Okay.
But it seems to me it's like something kind of on the Vijnana Maya kosha level, you know, that he gave up a disposition.
Changed his attitude, an attitude adjustment.
Yeah, he kind of let something die there. Something had to die, right? And I think that's something that we can all, you know, that's part of spiritual advancement, is like, in order to take a new birth, you have to let something die.
It's Bhakta Justin's story. A lot of that stuff, a lot of things in him just died to embrace something new. You know, it's probably, yeah, you're right. It's everybody's story coming to Bhakti. We shed an old skin.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it doesn't go into detail about exactly what he let go, but two things come to my mind, you know, and one has to do with the prestige of his position. You know, like, it hurts when you're embarrassed in some way. And even the Gita will say, for one who's been honored, dishonor is worse than death. Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is the way, as I'm getting older, as I think about life, you know, you kind of realize that you have to as a devotee, as someone whose goal is Krishna Prema, right? Like, my goal is pure love of God. I want nothing else. It's kind of like, then the message comes back, well, then you need to be able to let go of everything. Like, not even hang on to anything, right? You need to let go of everything. And, you know, as practicing bhakti yogis like you and I practice as monks, where you kind of like, you let go of a lot of stuff, but a lot of that is the external stuff, right? You let go of, you know, wealth, and you let go of sex, and you let go of, you know, your in a sense, you know, your independence in terms of how you engage your time and so on. You become a servant, and you let go of a lot of things. But as the process deepens, you have to let go of those more subtle things that are very deep. Like, for instance, the desire for prestige, right? The desire for recognition and so on.
Recognize me.
Recognize
I'm
me,
special.
appreciate me. All of these things have to do with our
Distinction, how unique I am.
distinction. Yeah, you know, we spoke yesterday about Krishna's Rasa Leela, in a sense of how, like, through sex, we're almost like trying to imitate that. But it's kind of like everything is trying to imitate Krishna. Like, you know, he's the most, you know, he's Bhagavan. So he's the strongest, the most beautiful, the most powerful, the most, you know, knowledgeable, the most famous, you know.
He's courageous. He's charming. And we all have these in minute detail. and therefore we run with it. Check how charming I am.
Yeah, right. I'm a candidate for God. You know, I could be the root of all existence. And
I'm running for God this year.
Yeah, and so like that, you know, that opulence of fame or prestige with Krishna embodies effortlessly, unlimitedly, gracefully. We try to take some of that for ourselves, and we live it awkwardly, you know, painfully, you know, destructively, and so we have to let it go. You know, we have to let it go. So I think part of what Brahma let go of, it's one thought that comes to my mind is, you know, here he is, the most respected person, and his own sons who have such respect for him come up and they say, excuse me, but we don't understand what's going on. And that pain, you know, of feeling dishonored, you know, he's like, you know what, that conception of that I'm so pure and I'm so righteous and I'm so dignified, I let it go. You know?
Sure.
But
You know,
it all, yeah.
Another thing in our early Kaustubha, Mara, we have early morning satsangs. We have private ones. Sometimes we invite you in, Mara, and sometimes they're just private, and we just relish the nectar.
It's guy talk.
Guy Bhagavad Gita talk. But we were talking this morning early, and you know, the Vedic system is set up in social orders.
Yeah.
For you to help sort of like do what you do in this world. And so the sannyas social order is meant for you to sort of like, you know, you have one set of clothes or two sets of clothes. You travel. You have no home. You have no bank account. They say in the Vedic teachings teach that you're socially dead. You have no family. But there's an internal thing. So we're talking about now. This is sort of what's coming up in my head right now is it's not necessarily the social order, because the social order is to assist you in some. There you go.
Nope, we can't hear you, Raghunath. He's going to get a new cable. He's going to order one today, right? Can't hear you.
Hey, people, getting a new cable Monday.
There you go.
Okay. So the social order is meant to assist us in something. I can be.
It's just a train. It's okay. No, we can hear you. We were able to hear you, Raghunath.
Okay.
Now we can't.
Now you cannot?
Now we can.
Okay. You hear that train in the background?
We did, yeah.
Okay. So the social order is meant to assist us, but it's not going to do the work for us. The work for us is that I'm renounced from the desire for sense gratification. This is Bhagavad Gita 6:1. Maybe Mary could pull that verse up. So this is the like real inner teachings, I feel like, of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not the social order, because I could be walking around house to house like a mendicant, like a holy person, two sets of clothes, long beard, but I'm doing it because I want something. I want to be renowned as the renounced guy. I want to get some praise or some adoration. I'm comfortable there. We're not looking just for comfort in the material world in bhakti. Bhakti's love. We want to be madly in love with Krishna. I'm not looking for an easy way out. If Krishna wants me to take on a massive burden, that's bhakti. I don't want to back off from my responsibility in service to Krishna. I'll take it on. I'll move to a place that doesn't seem bhakti. Krishna wants me to live in the inner city. If that's what Krishna wants, I'll have to do it. That's called pure devotional service. So what I'm renouncing is the desire for sense gratification. And those social orders can help, but they're not going to make you do it. You got to be really internally strong. And if you're not internally strong, you have to, on a regular basis, turn to people who are internally strong, who can guide you. Mary, you want to quote that verse, please?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "One who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as he is obligated in the renounced order of life. And he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty."
Purport by Kaustubha. Let's hear your purport on that.
Well, that's a verse about karma yoga, right? But it's saying that it's a verse that has to do with sincerity, I guess you could say, right? It's saying that Arjuna, throughout the first, second, third, fourth, fifth chapters, he's having trouble embracing a certain concept that by carrying out duties in this world, it seems to him that that naturally binds one, right? When you become a father, when you become a business person, when you become, in his case, a warrior, when you become a husband, and the duties that are that come with that, there's enjoyment that comes through all of those roles, and generally, by playing out those roles, one binds themselves further in this world, and the yogis walk away from it. That's Arjuna's concept, right? The yogis walk away from all of that. They turn their back on it. They leave it behind. Here, Krishna's making a real point. No, 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 no. It's not the external thing that determines whether or not you're performing yoga or whether you're renounced, a sannyasi. It actually has to do with one's internal disposition, right? And so he's saying, actually, the real sannyasi is the person that's performing their duties in this world, but does it with detachment.
So you can be a householder, you can be a parent, you can be you're just getting, this is my duty, this is my service. I'm not doing this for my sense pleasure. I'm taking on even an extra burden and my focus on serving Krishna and doing my duty and doing my dharma.
Yeah. You know, do you remember earlier in the Bhagavatam, Raghunath, we read where these were the first prayers of the universe, when after Brahma had gone down the stem, he didn't find anything, he came back up to the top of the lotus. He did his meditation for a very long time. And then he had a vision of Lord Vishnu, right? And then he said his prayers to Lord Vishnu. And those prayers were, it was, and I believe the title of that chapter was Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy.
Oh, yeah.
He knew he had a duty to perform in terms of creation. That was a duty that he took on behalf of Lord Vishnu, as service to Lord Vishnu. He wanted the creative power to perform the service. And then he said, and I also don't want to become proud, right? He recognized that that's our nature, that we become proud of anything. The pauper is proud of his penny. What to speak of Brahma, who creates so much? I'll become proud. I'll think I'm the center of the universe. And so now this is something interesting, that now here's this person, in one sense, he's got the unique relationship with Lord Vishnu, right? He was right there from the beginning. Anyone else that comes along is second or third down the line. He's got that intimate connection. He's got obviously incredible powers of meditation and incredible intelligence and incredible powers of creation. But he wanted humility. And sometimes you get what you pray for in ways that aren't necessarily so comfortable, and now he's being humiliated in front of his own, children and his own sons.
It's one of those things in the material world, that humiliation is like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
When put through your bhakti yoga spiritual practice,
it could be the most important moment of your life, right?
Yeah, humiliating, cracking your ego open, shedding, letting go of stuff you've been attached to, some false identity of how you presented yourself in the world. And you walk away going, okay, thank you, Krishna.
Yeah, well, that's what I was getting to, right? That if, you could respond two ways. Humiliation could be like, I'm trying to serve here and still you're humiliating me enough, I've had enough. Or it could be like humiliation can be the breakthrough, that this is what I needed to let go because I was so attached. You're so merciful. You did this for me. You humiliated me. Sure. How else would I let go of my ego, thinking I'm so special, I'm the center, I'm but you took it away.
What to speak of losing your body? What must it be like to lose your body? Where you think you have control, you think you are this, perhaps this beauty, you think you are your stuff, you think you are your and then you're losing your body. You must have to you got to let go of all of that in such a very beautiful way.
Yeah,
Kaustubha.
Wow.
You know what?
What?
One of the early devotees, Haryagriva, one of the first devotees of Prabhupada from 1966.
Author of that great book,
Hare Krishna Explosion, and
Vrindavan Days.
Vrindavan Days.
Yeah.
If you don't have this book, Google this book, Vrindavan Days.
It's a fun read.
And you can get a PDF on it. It's a great read. I don't think you can buy it anymore, but you can get it on a PDF somewhere online. Remember we read that, Mara?
Yeah, it was great.
It was great.
It's kind of like a Jack Kerouac following Prabhupada in Vrindavan or something like that.
Yeah, he was like, he struggled. He was gay. He struggled following the four regulative principles. He was a professor at Columbia, no, at Ohio State, and he was sort of a very cool, interesting, thoughtful guy.
Beatnik kind of character.
Beatnik, cool, but he struggled a little. He wasn't like, all right, gung ho, super gung ho. He was gung ho. I think he was gung ho, but he also what was beautiful about his book in Vrindavan days? He was
honest.
vulnerable, and he wrote about his struggle.
Yeah.
But Prabhupada told him, come to India, but I want you to dress in a suit. And he was very tall. He wore this big suit because he wanted to say, it's like, this is one of my educated disciples. He's not a hippie. He's a professor. So anyway, make a long story short, he got AIDS, and he died. He was dying of AIDS, and I was in New Vrindavan visiting there, and I was with Satyaraj Prabhu, who's a Prabhupada disciple, and an author like Hari Agriba was.
They're friends, yeah.
Yeah, and he was walking by, and he called Satyaraj in, so I went in there also. And I tell you, his body was rail thin. This must have been on one of his last days of living. And he couldn't move. He had a nurse who would clean up after him, and he was just talking to Satyaraj very frankly. He said, when we met Prabhupada, because Prabhupada knew nobody. He came to the Lower East Side, didn't know anybody, and they were the first group of people.
He was one of the first. Yeah.
First teenagers, 20-year-old as he met. He said, when we saw Prabhupada, we thought we were helping the old man out. And then he burst into tears.
Wow.
And then he said, Prabhupada told me to give up everything for Krishna. And I refused. And now I'm giving up everything by force. Right. It was such a very beautiful, deep realization. And I was felt so fortunate to be in the room and hear that. And when you hear these stories, it makes you, yes, okay, I need conviction about my spiritual life. I feel like he was sent for me. And this is how this stuff works. We just round these nuggets.
It's very interesting because, in other words, if I'm understanding you correctly, what you're saying is that he got the message of bhakti. He got the message of renunciation, although he didn't have the strength to let it go on his own. But what he did have was the perspective that when it was taken from him by force, he could see it all clearly. He understood it, and in that sense didn't resist it, but kind of grew through that.
It was quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was quite beautiful. And you know what? I felt him to be very, very connected at that point. Like, of course, there's some lamentation, some humiliation. Imagine you're laying there, skinny like a bone. You once thought you were cool. You once thought you were beautiful.
He was like a big, strong guy,
too. Body's emaciated. Yeah, your body's emaciated. He was an intellectual, and now he's got nothing. And the universe is taking everything away. And you realized it was never yours. Everything the Vedas say, it was all on loan to you. And It's pounded through our head on a regular basis. And I fight it. I fight it every day. This is mine. I am cool. I am attractive. I am charming. It's not true. It's a loaner. It's a rental. It's a Hertz rent a meat suit.
It's a false self, right? And you got to before, that's the point. And this is the goal of our life, right? That before the body dies...
The neighbors are looking at me.
Okay, but before the body dies, you let the false self die, right? And maybe he wasn't able to do that earlier in his life, but as his body started to die, he was able to let that false self die because he could see it happening before him. The Gita, when it describes the asuric mentality, right? There's the suric mentality, which means like the mentality of the devas, who
Sura means godly,
and like they have a sense of devotion or at the very least connection to God. And then the asuric is the opposite. And part of the description of that, it says Ishvaraham aham bogi, right? Aham means I am. So Ishvaraham aham bogi, I'm the controller, I'm the enjoyer. That's the basic mentality, right? Those are the two positions of God. We come into this world and we try to take them for ourselves. I'm the controller. I'm the enjoyer. And what we see, and, so obviously, in terms of sexuality, that a humbogi, that's where we play it out the most dramatically, through the act of sex, and in controlling in so many ways, right? But we're trying to take those opulences of Krishna and take them for ourselves. But what happens is, as practitioners, we hear these instructions and we struggle, just like this person you're mentioning, how you grieve a struggle to let it all go. But time comes along and helps us do this, right? So at least we should have that perspective that everything that I have that my prestige may be tied to starts to wither away. My strength, my physical strength, whatever power or influence I have in this world, as you're getting old, it's likely starting to diminish. Like I had this role and then I grew old and someone else took over the role and they're doing it all wrong and I know how to do it right. And, you feel those feelings, one's
again,
beauty, Yeah, go ahead.
Again, it's like the material world, as it's starting to take away and break you down and take body and take your mind, take your intelligence, take your beauty. It's a horrible thing unless you're practicing bhakti. That's why bhakti uproots the threefold miseries, because it's actually the time factor is very beautiful. It's giving you now the time factor, which was working against you, is giving you deep realization.
There you go.
It's giving you a deep detachment, and you only thank these things that were once pinned against you as your enemies.
Yeah.
This
So
is
So Brahma, he wants to be that servant. And to be the pure servant, you need to let go of the false self. So to carry out that service, he has to go within. He has to examine whatever illusory or destructive concepts he has about himself. He has to see them for what they are, and then he has to let them die. He has to take a new birth. And so, that's what it means here by he gave up the body. So and again, that means all of those opulences I'm trying to take from Krishna's strength, it goes away with time. Beauty goes away with time. Like say the role of a parent, right? Which is something someone might identify with. What do they call that? Like the leaving the nest syndrome or something like that, right?
Yeah, empty nest syndrome.
Empty nest syndrome, right? Like this is me. This is my identity. I'm the parent. I'm the caretaker for this soul, and then that soul leaves the nest. It's like, who am I now? Right? You feel a loss of identity. One way or another, you're going to have to let it go. One's wealth, one has to let it go. One's fame slips away. One's power, one's influence. All these opulences, they're going to go. Now, the wiser person, they're letting them go long before their time takes it away, right?
Sure.
And they're thinking, I don't want these opulences for myself. I simply want to serve because that's who I am. That's my real nature. And that's why, like it's interesting, but like in puja, right? Like puja, which is a ritual, a worship ritual, which to some people can just seem like, oh, it's some kind of strange, weird, like primitive act of offering something to God who doesn't really exist, who doesn't need your stuff anyway. But no, like puja, when it's done in the right conception, it's really done. It's a very deep form of meditation and a form of transformation, wherein one kind of reprograms the mind very intentionally. And puja is generally preceded by a part of that ritual is called bhuta shuddhi, right?
Cleansing of the bhuta.
In one sense, like cleansing of the self, and but it's all about like, because assuming like puja, and again, puja generally it's making offerings to your deity, right? Who you worship. And so you find really great instruction. I was reading this chapter of the 11th canto. What was it? 11th canto, chapter 3. This chapter is just incredible. Everything you need to know about life is in this chapter. It's so great. But, it has King Nimi, and he's asking the sages different questions about life. And one sage after the next is giving him the answers. And then he gets into, like, the sages start to get into the practice of puja, and how it works. And how, let me see if I can find it here.
Maharaj Nimi.
Maharaj Nimi. And so he says, okay, I'm going to read a little about this puja, okay? And when I read about it, one can help understand how this bhakti ritual is tied to exactly what we're talking about here, letting the false self die and embracing one's true identity. So he says, having obtained the mercy of his spiritual master, this is text 48 of chapter 3 of Canto 11. Having obtained the mercy of his spiritual master who reveals to the disciple the injunctions of Vedic scriptures, the devotee should worship the Supreme Personality in the particular personal form of the Lord the devotee finds most attractive. For you, Raghu, that would be?
Sweet baby Krishna.
Sweet baby Krishna. After cleansing oneself. Now, so this is how you do the puja, right? You take a shower, right? After cleansing oneself. Purifying the body by pranayama, right? And that's purifying the airs within the body. And then bhuta shuddhi, then purifying the conception of who I am. You know, I am not this body. I'm not a man. I'm not a woman. I'm not a business person. I'm not a parent. I'm not a big shot. I'm not a this. I'm not that. I'm not any of these things.
I do all that stuff as soon as I wake up.
Yeah, I am Gopi, Bharta, Kamala Yor, Dasa, Dasa, Anudasa. I am the servant of Sri Krishna, the Lord of the Gopis. That's even just chanting that verse is how we practice bhuta shuddhi. Let me remind myself that although I'm living in this external world, in this external body, with this subtle body, all its false conceptions, let me remind myself, let me reprogram myself through that remembrance, through that reflection of who I really am. And so when I enter this ritual, that's where I want to be, at least for this 10 or 15 or 20 minutes a day while I'm doing this ritual. I want to let go of all false conceptions of who I am and abide in my eternal form. So he says, after cleansing oneself, purifying the body by pranayama, bhuta shuddhi, and other processes, and marking the body with the sacred tilak for protection, one should sit in front of the deity and worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, make the offerings. A devotee should gather whatever ingredients for worshiping the deity are available, making ready the offerings, the ground, his mind, and the deity. Sprinkle his sitting place with water for purification, and prepare the bathing water and other paraphernalia.
I didn't sprinkle my sitting place.
Sprinkle it, Raghunath.
Sprinkle it.
The devotee should then place the deity in his proper place, both physically and within his own mind, and concentrate his attention, and mark the deity's heart and other parts of the body with tilak. Then he should offer worship with the appropriate mantra. Okay? One should worship the deity along with each of the limbs of his transcendental body, his weapons such as the Sudarshan Chakra, his other bodily features, and his personal associates. One should worship each of these transcendental aspects of the Lord by its own mantra, and with offerings of water to wash the feet, scented water, water to wash the mouth, water for bathing, fine clothing and ornaments. These are the offerings that are made, right? Individually, I'm going to offer each, just like if a guest came into my home, I'm worshiping Krishna entering my heart, and I'm offering all these different comforts and so on. And then these are the last two verses. I thought these were really great. The worshiper should become fully absorbed in meditating upon himself as the eternal servant of the Lord. That's the bhuta shuddhi. That's letting the old self die and the rebirth, right? And one should thus perfectly worship the deity, remembering the deity is also situated within his heart. So I'm worshiping this external form with the idea that this God, the same God, is sitting within me. Then he should take the remnants of the deity's paraphernalia, such as flower garlands, upon his head, and respectfully put the deity back in its own place, thus concluding the worship. And then this is the way you go through the day once you've done this ritual. The worshiper of the Supreme Lord should recognize that the personality of Godhead is all-pervading, and should worship him through his presence in fire, the sun, water, and other elements, in the heart of the guest one receives in one's home, and in one's own heart. In this way, the worshiper will very soon achieve liberation. Right? So this external ritual is meant to help us realize our own internal situation, as well as the fact that God is within our own heart, that God is within the sun, that God is within the water, that God is within the heart of every living entity. If a guest comes to my home, I'm recognizing God within them. right? You let the old self die, like I'm the center of everything. You bring on the new conception, I'm the servant of everyone. And in this way, you achieve truth and you achieve liberation.
Anyone comes to that door, UPS,
UPS.
God's in their heart. Hey, you know what?
Worship
I felt like this, the detachment, the shedding of the skin, the getting humiliated, the public ego, losing everything that we identified as ours. I needed to hear this. I felt like everything was geared towards me. Isn't it how the world works? It's all about me. But I actually felt like the Bhagavatam was really speaking to me. I needed to hear it every day. I need to hear it every day. I needed to hear it. It is cooling. It is very cooling. It's fire going on in my heart and mind. Yeah. So sweet. Quenching the forest fire of material existence. Takeaways?
Any takeaways, Mara?
Yeah, in order to birth spiritual life, you have to let old layers and dispositions die.
Yes.
We aren't looking for comfort. We're looking for love.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not just trying to back out. I just need a comfortable situation. No. Take it on. Step forward. Make that in the sand.
Lie in the sand, okay.
Sometimes you get what you pray for in ways that are humiliating.
Yes. Bring on the humiliation.
Yeah. Let the false self die before the body dies.
Nice.
And everything withers in time.
Everything.
Hare Krishna. It's a beautiful day. Thanks, everybody. What a great day. Join us in Italy. We're going to go to Italy, go to Wisdom of the Sages, click on the Italy tab. We're going to eat pasta and pizza and hear and chant. And there's plenty of vegan stuff and gluten-free stuff and peacocks and deities. It's an ashram. It's Tuscany. It's gorgeous. There's hills. There's Tuscan. It's a Tuscan villa. Machiavelli himself will be there.